What's going on, brother?
Good, good. I'm doing
100.
good, man.
All right now.
I know you personally.
That's right.
From working out with you. I get an audience a brief introduction how we met.
Right.
I was thinking about this on the way home when we was testing. Before I told you I'm about to pick my daughter up. I was thinking about it. I said I'm gonna bring this story up to see if you remember. I said I know my man ain't gonna remember. The first time we ever met. I know you're not gonna remember.
Try me.
All right. So at the time I was working at my one job, and there's a few other fellas up there that went to the view, and Zulu was pretty much a myth. Like I remember the first time I brought your name up, like, man, it's this dude that be in the gym. He had 315 just sitting on his chest. He came up in there. He had 315 sitting on his chest. I went over there and asked him if he need help. He was like, And he lifted up, and I was like, wow. I was like, oh yeah, that guy is always in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think one of my men knew your name. He was like, his name's Zulu. I was like, Zulu? Like, yeah. It's like,
right.
All right. I was like, well, I never seen him before. That's the first time I seen you. But then I began to notice you more. And at the time, I had just started benching. I had got up to 225, but I was struggling with it. But I was an ego lifter too. I'm still kind of an ego lifter, but I check myself sometimes.
Right.
And I was on with 225 struggling. You had your headphones on. You always worked out with your headphones and the hoodie on.
That's
and you
right.
was walking by, and you saw me struggling. I had it.
Right.
But you came over and you said, nah, my man, let me help. You came over there and helped spot me and put it on. You was like, yeah, I know you had it, but do you mind if I show you something real quick, show you the correct way of lifting? You don't want to injure yourself. And a lot of things with guys in the gym, we already know is that most guys don't like taking advice from another lifter.
That's right.
So I was like, okay, I'll listen to you. And you start showing me stuff. That's the first time I was introduced to the pause reps and whatnot.
Right.
But it's so funny because back then, 225 I was struggling with.
Yeah.
I was struggling with 225.
I remember.
I was struggling, but now I play with 225. That's the first
Right.
time I met you.
Right.
And you know, in Zulu, what's your real name if you don't mind me?
Oh, my real name is Raymond Williams.
Raymond Williams.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions I want to know. You know what? I always want to know what builds the person into who they are today. How they became the person they are. So I'll start off first by asking, where are you from? Where you from? Are you from Kansas City?
No, I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, 9th Ward in New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind telling me a little bit about your upbringing? Because I know
Nah.
your generation probably a little different from
Yeah,
my
man.
generation.
Once again, I'm 50 years old now, so we have a pretty deep generation gap right now between me and you. But being from the South, from the 9th Ward in New Orleans, grew up pretty hard. I grew up around in Gentilly Woods, is what it's called, which is not far away from the Desire Project itself. So we kind of grew up in those conditions. It was one of those conditions where you had to be real masculine. We did a lot of fighting. We did a lot of things. I guess you would say that will sharpen you to be an aggressive person, whether you wanted to or not. Kind of like the jungle, man. You know, you have to become what you need to become inside of the jungle, or you become the prey.
Right.
So it was one of those situations. So it was me and two of my two brothers I have. One is deceased. You know the tattoo I wear on my forearm. That was my youngest brother. He was murdered in the 9th Ward, shot 7 times with an AK-47. His name was Lance. And if you know Young Bull, that's who Young Bull is named after.
Okay.
His name is Vontrell Lance Williams. My brother was Lance Vontrell Williams. So he got the name from my brother, his uncle. That's how I named Young Bull. He's a special young individual. But I grew up in the 9th Ward, broken home. My father was an alcoholic, but got a lot of love from him. I learned a lot of things from him. Maybe not all the right things, but I did still learn some things of substance from him, My mother kind of had a nervous breakdown, man. So I was kind of on my own. I was kind of like, I took charge of the family at a young age. I took charge of my 2 brothers. And I found myself going into the military. I don't know how far you want me to go, but
No, I'm gonna get there because I was gonna ask you how did you we can see you a vet. We know you're a vet.
Right.
I want to know how did you transition or end up going to the military. And, before we get there though, is the military before your move to Kansas City or is it
way before.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm still in New
let's get
Orleans.
to the military because I want to get to how you got from your early
to
beginnings
where I
to
am
the
now.
military to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I had a real sorted, twisted upbringing. A lot of violence, a lot of things that was going on that, a kid at probably the age of 16 and 17 shouldn't really be involved in. But once again, I'm in there with wolves. In the night ward of New Orleans, anybody tell you, it's wolves out there. In order to survive, you got to become a wolf. So in doing that, you take a lot of things. A lot of things happen, man. I almost ruined my future being what I'm calling a wolf, trying to survive in that environment. I almost threw away everything. So I got myself in a situation, and it was a pretty violent situation, and I found myself going to the military because of it, really to try to escape everything that was around me, man. And I found myself going in. I went in at 18 years old, and that's how I got into the military. Now,
How was that experience for you? Wait, what year? Well, give so the audience will kind of know
right.
what year we in, or what kind of year was it, and how was that experience in the military for you, being at such a young age? What some of the challenges that you saw or you faced in the military, if any challenges, like some positive things that
Right.
you took from it?
Right.
If you want to speak about some of the I don't really want to say negative things, but we'll just call it.
Well, there
challenges.
were unpleasant things. I
Okay.
keep it real, bro.
Okay,
Like I
thanks.
told you, I'm transparent. You can ask me anything.
Okay.
But I will tell you the truth. I've learned I don't have a filter. And what I mean by I don't have a filter, I've lived long enough with a bridled tongue, meaning that I had to watch everything I say, or I felt I was going to be affected, negatively by someone or someone passing judgment on me. But I've been through so much, brother. That's why I have an unbridled tongue. I speak with a lot of passion. So going into the military, for me, it was a way of escape, actually. In my opinion, it was a way of escape. It was in 1989. Now, this is before Desert Storm.
Okay.
I didn't know that Desert Storm was right around the corner for me, that going to war was right around the corner for me. So I'm coming from, like I said, out the ninth ward of New Orleans. I'm coming up as a troubled kid. I got a lot of anger. I got a lot of aggression. The only way I think I can express myself was through these. So I always was involved in combat sports. Like, I train Greco-Roman wrestling now, and I train some fighters now. And the reason I clung on to that because that became a part of who I was. But when I went into the military, I went in with that same kind of mentality, and it almost cost me some things as well. But I had a drill sergeant named Drill Sergeant Good Game. That was his name, Good Game. And he saw something in me. He saw I had a lot of passion because when you put a lot of people together, these people coming from all over different places, they have different cultures. And you run into a lot of racism. Now, where I'm from down in the South, disrespect is no. I can't allow you to disrespect me and get away with that. That's kind of how I was brought up in that area. But you meet some people that will simply disrespect you because that's all they know how to do is disrespect people. So it caused you to lash out. It caused me to lash out. Many fights, many altercations in the military when I first went in.
Okay.
Many it's cultural differences. You had some white guys. I had a white guy call me a porch monkey. I had never heard that expression before in my life. A porch monkey.
And you from the South.
Yeah, but I took it automatically offensive. I've never heard the terminology. I understood it was a racial shot at me, and I went in, and that's just how I was trained to go in my environment that I came from, So I got into it with the guy, did a number on him, but when they broke up the fight and, they found out what it was all about, Drill Sergeant Good Game pulled me to the side because they was wanting to go ahead and get me out of there because I just went off. I didn't want nobody to touch me or none of that. He pulled me to the side, really, and, he really got my attention. And he said, all that anger and all that passion you have will make you a great man one day. And that's what he told me. And I never had nobody speaking into my life positively. It was always something negative I had to deal with. You're not going to be good enough. You coming from nothing. You're going to be nothing. That kind of situation. So all that I took inside, and when it come out, it comes out like a volcano. A volcano just erupting. It comes out that way. And he took me to the side, man, and he spoke to me that way. And I wanted to impress him more than anything when I was in the military. So everything I did, it was because I wanted Drill Sergeant Good Game to think highly of me. And that kept me from doing other things. You know, they kind of start getting me on a different path. I start to learn certain things about my own personal character, right? A lot of people say it's not where you're from, it's where you at. And that's a very true statement. I don't believe in, well, I'm from such and such. When people say those kind of things, that's foolish. Where you from don't mean nothing. It's where you at right now. And what you do with the experiences from where you from is what means something, you know. So that to me, I begin to understand that a little bit more. Now I find myself getting ready to go into combat. Here comes Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Now I'm an M1A1 Tanker.
Can you explain what that is for the people that don't?
Yeah, M1A1 Tanker. If you don't know what M1A1 Tanker is, any combat situation that you may know of, combat game, you heard of tanks, armored tanks. So that's the people who man those armored tanks. There's a loader, there's a driver, there's a gunner, and there's a tank commander. That's me. A tank commander that, you know, arms the tank and makes, you know, everything that goes on inside of the tank take place. So that's what a tanker is. And those are, when you are a tanker, it's like infantry, tanks, artillery, engineers. Those are your frontline soldiers.
Okay.
They're not support units like supply, water specialists, and all that stuff. They're important, but they're not what frontline units are.
Okay.
And when I say frontline units, that means when something pop off, we the ones in the front fighting. The ones that are actually doing the fighting.
Okay, so how was that experience when going? Now it seems like you finding that positive influence. I won't say necessarily role model, but that positive male influence.
Right.
Which I won't say I think it's the cause of kind of the umbrella you being. It explains a little bit for me, like you take a lot of the young men under your wing,
right,
or you give them some knowledge, you know, a lot that I don't see nowadays from an older generation. You either got the older generation telling the young what they're not doing right, what they're doing wrong, but they're not really leading by an example, or if they are leading by example, they don't care enough to give a roadmap to how to get there.
That's right.
So you get that, and you coming from such a war zone, if we could say that type upbringing,
right,
and now you're getting thrown back into that.
Right.
How was that experience for you?
Well, that experience as far as going into the war zone now, you know, I always looked at New Orleans, Louisiana as being like a war zone for me. At a definitely a smaller level. Nothing that could prepare you to go to actual combat. I found myself in actual combat. And one of the things that I have a lot of respect for Vietnam veterans. And this is why I do. When I went to war at the age of 19, I just made 19 when I went into combat. It was the Vietnam veterans. They were still in the Army. They were on the last part of their time being in before they were retiring and everything. But they had a stop loss, which means that people who were ready to retire, even at that time, they stopped them because now they need them to go to war. So they call that a stop loss. So I had a lot of Vietnam veterans in my unit. I'm on a frontline unit. I was in 3rd of the 32nd Armor in Fort Hood, Texas, 1st Cav. So those individuals taught me how to survive in a war zone. It's very different than you saying I'm going through some hard times, or I'm beefing with these cats here, I'm getting into this kind of trouble. No, it was a different situation. I had been in those kind of miscellaneous troubles. I had been in beefs. I had been in shootouts. But when it came to this kind of environment, that I thought I'd never be able, I'd never see death at that magnitude.
Wow.
And so what I think what changed me is seeing the kind of death, the images of death, or the faces of death, so to speak. I'm talking about severed heads, twisted bodies, caved in skulls, bodies so riddled with ammunition that you can't even, it just looked like a piece of chopped meat. Those are the images that you just can't get away from. Couldn't get away from it. When you see those images, or when you see death take place, you can't say, let me go home and process this. Let me call my girl. Let me call my mom. Let me call my wife. Somebody to talk to about it. You have to just internally deal with it, and you have to still be on that front line fighting. So that did some things to me. I learned how to deal with fear, because anyone that really been to combat, brother, will tell you, if you've been on the front line, you were scared. I was scared out my mind. I thought I was tough. You know how some people may think they're tough. I think I can fight good. I think I can, it took everything out of me. And I had to experience the first, once you're occupied on that front line, the first mission that we had. And I had a lieutenant. His name, I'm going to say his name, Lieutenant Griggs.
Okay.
What he did, we had our first mission, our first combat mission. And at the time, it was for us, it was a platoon of us, M1 tankers, to face the Iraqi Republican Guard, which was the top-notch fighting force.
In this Desert Storm, right?
And this is Desert Storm.
Okay.
So what we were supposed to do, this is the first battle, this is my first combat zone, Desert Storm. We got an op order, which is an operation orders on what to expect and where we need to go and what we need to go and, perform. We got the op order. The chaplain comes up. And when you see the chaplain on the front line, it then got real. Because the expectation of you coming back is slim to none, brother.
And
Go ahead.
I'm just for the ones that don't know, just for the chap, what you call it?
Chaplain.
Chaplain. He's basically gonna come. He's there to
give
read
you-
them last.
That's to give you last rites.
Okay,
Chaplain is
okay.
like a priest or, just a person that represents so-called represents religion in one
Okay.
way or another.
I just want to make sure that
Right.
for the ones that watching that's
Sure,
not familiar,
sure.
we really put them. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So he's called the chaplain. He comes and gives you, your
How
last.
was that for you to see that, to internalize that, the reality of the situation that you are in now? How did that make you feel? You are, of course, you already said you was. I think anyone would be afraid or in fear
Right.
being in a war, knowing they going to war. But to know now, oh wow, some of us not gonna make it home.
Right. Well, the way that thing unfolds, it's like when it gets real. You can talk about things happening, until it starts to really happen to you. When it really gets real, it got really real for me at that particular point, and that's when being on the front line. First of all, getting the news that we were going to deploy to go out in Iraq. We're frontline fighting forces. We're the first ones out there. We're on the front line. And our life expectancy as an M1 tanker is 3 seconds on the battlefield. So that's, in all actuality, that's saying when the stuff happens, you possibly have only 3 seconds to live or die or kill. So that's the kind of mentality that you're already trained with. But when you get out there and you actually get the operations order, the op order, to go and face another, which is an elite fighting force, which was called the Republican Guard. It sat down in me kind of deep, but when the chaplain came and prayed, like I told you, this guy, Lieutenant Griggs, he was the lieutenant. He started crying. Now you gotta understand, I'm a private. I think I'm a private first class at this time. He's a platoon leader. He's a lieutenant. And he started crying. To the point to where we was looking at him like it started to mess with other people. It started to make fear become overwhelming. And so when he started crying, what my first sergeant did, which was a Vietnam veteran, hardcore, he came up to me and said, "Hey, you're going to have to stop that damn crying. You got men getting ready to go to war. And you taking all the fight out of them right now by you showing your weakness." That's what he did, man. And he tried to pull away. He grabbed him and smacked him. And told him, "You're not going to go on this mission." And took everything from him, took his weapon from him, took everything from him except for a gas mask. That's the only thing he could have. And we still had to go forward. And he came back and, he tried to reinforce us that, listen, y'all are highly trained soldiers. You train to kill. That's your job. When you become an M1 tanker, you are a killer. It's no getting around it. That's what you do. That's what you train to do 24/7. And so he tried to re-encourage us to go back out there. And we, of course, we didn't have a choice.
Right.
But the fact that that's what war can do. If you let the fear overtake you, which, it can make you be like Lieutenant Griggs was. He cried, he couldn't do it. So that lesson taught me something. We went into that combat, into that battle, and we won overwhelmingly. We didn't even lose a casualty in that particular firefight. We didn't lose none, but we came back, and everybody was still good at that particular time. But we did kill some, let's say probably about 15 enemy vehicles.